So what we do on Let Us Explain is dive deep on something that we can't stop thinking about for other people who can't stop thinking about that thing too. That means we'll be talking about anything and everything. Sometimes that includes spoilers. But before we jump into the spoiler zone, let's talk more generally about Contagion and Outbreak. I am your co-host, Zachary Shevich, and joining me, stop touching your face, it's Arturo Zurita!
It's very difficult. I'm ready to get the cone and everything to go around, but you can't leave, so we decided to cover these two movies that, while may seem scary, we always talk about movies having a completely different connotation. I always make the reference to Prisoners. A thriller, until you have kids, then it's a horror movie, and these movies definitely have a different connotation.
Yeah. Also with us, we've got our quarantine thought. It's producer intern Fernando.
Glad to be here, guys. Yeah,
That's rude.
Very different connotation, especially in these times. But glad to be here.
All right, so we're going to get into these movies because across the globe, people are socially isolating and trying to help stem the spread of COVID-19. So naturally, pandemic is on the mind. People have been turning to pandemic movies, and as a result, we've seen Contagion in the iTunes and Amazon rental charts for weeks now. And the movie Outbreak has cracked Netflix's own top 10. So they're two of the more popular pandemic movies, and we want to compare and contrast them, talk about how they make us feel in the time of coronavirus. First off, Outbreak, which was released in 1995, was directed by Wolfgang Peterson and has a loaded cast that includes Dustin Hoffman, Rene Russo, Morgan Freeman, Donald Sutherland, Kevin Spacey, Cuba Gooding Jr., and a pre-Grey's Anatomy, Patrick Dempsey. It's kind of funny to see him in this. The film spent 3 weeks atop the American box office. Guys, do either of you know what movie finally dethroned Outbreak from the top of the box office?
It's a comedy.
Yes.
Hold on. Is it Tomboy?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Very good. Chris Farley's own Tommy Boy. While the film debuted to mixed reviews, Roger Ebert, nonetheless, gave it 3.5 out of 4 stars, calling Outbreak a clever and daunting thriller. Contagion, on the other hand, comes from Steven Soderbergh and writer Scott Z. Burns, who collaborated on The Informant and Side Effects before making this movie. Burns said that he wanted to create a medical thriller that would feel like it could happen. So he consulted with Dr. Larry Brilliant, yes, real name, Larry Brilliant, one of the doctors who eradicated smallpox. This film, too, would be loaded with recognizable stars, including Matt Damon, Gwyneth Paltrow, Marion Cotillard, Lawrence Fishburne, Jude Law, Kate Winslet, Bryan Cranston, Jennifer Ely, Sanaa Lathan, and John Hawkes. While when Contagion was released in September of 2011, it also hit #1 at the box office, but only for a week. Its reputation with critics was pretty good, though, an 85% on Rotten Tomatoes. However, prior to this year, I don't think many people would have had Contagion in like their top 5 Soderbergh films or something like that. I feel like a little bit overlooked in his catalog. So, guys, I wanted to start with this. Given our current pandemic situation, which of these movies did you prefer to watch?
Fernando?
I definitely preferred Contagion, just because Outbreak did seem more of like a blockbuster-esque type of movie, not as grounded as Contagion. Like you said, Scott Z. Burns wanted to make like a movie that felt like it could happen, where Outbreak definitely had more of like that like military involvement, like kind of crazy scenarios that could still happen, but don't seem as likely in like the real world. So Contagion, I'd say Contagion.
Outbreak is trending on Netflix because Contagion is not on there.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that. You know, you need to actually purchase Contagion or get like a subscription thing to watch it, and it's still getting the charts. You know, people don't want to pay for their $19.99 movies, but they're willing to pay the 99 cents to see Contagion. And it's funny because I remember when it came out in 2011, and people knew about it. I think one of the biggest things was, this can't happen. Like, maybe, okay, but like, there's no way it's like this honed in, and with having such a big cast. I know Soderbergh gets a lot of criticism for sometimes having a Matt Damon just come in as a little, he's shooting on an iPhone, but he could afford Matt Damon to come in for a little cameo. And now you rewatch it and you go, those are the words they're telling us right now in 2020.
Right.
So to answer your question, Outbreak, if you want something that seems similar to what's going on right now, but you definitely want it to feel like a movie. Big cast just as well, but it feels like a blockbuster.
Yeah.
And I think it's still fun, but Contagion is scary.
both movies do an interesting job of sort of depicting the transition that a virus makes from like isolated, interesting thing to scientists to full-blown like panic in forms of government. Like I think both of those films do good jobs in certain regards to what the way they talk about how a disease can spread among the population, but Outbreak's solution to all that is to turn into a very conventional Hollywood thriller, right? Like the Outbreak, by the end of the film, it's like, how can we fix this with a helicopter chase, you know?
Yeah.
Which is fun. Like I enjoyed it, and there's really charismatic performances from its stars. You know, you get kind of like one of those cheesy but kind of stupid fun romance plots amongst this all between Dustin Hoffman and Rene Russo, where he does things that no certified medical doctor would ever put himself in those risks. But it's a Hollywood movie. It's a Hollywoodized version of it. Contagion is not that. Contagion is like a true to life medical thriller, down to it's the minorest details, and the way that Contagion is able to turn the spread of a disease into this like horror movie, I think is just so artful, and I think puts it in a league above films like Outbreak. Whereas Outbreak, it might be more fun. Contagion is just such a all-encompassing type of view of a world that in some ways is beginning to look like ours, although it gets far worse than I want to believe we'll ever get. And it's kind of stunning to see all the things that this movie talks about that we are now hearing echoed. Whether that's the message of like, wash your hands, don't touch your face, keep away from people, socially isolate, or it's the way that they show hospitals being made, you know, just temporary to hold the infected. I mean, it's like, it's eerie some of the ways that this movie got things right.
I agree with you. I think Outbreak uses its characters, you know, to be a blockbuster. It uses its actors to give you lines like, "We've been waiting for a virus our entire careers. Let's kill it." Or is someone telling Dustin Hoffman, "Oh, by order of the United States, you can't." Well, by order of the United States, go screw yourself. Contagion uses big celebrities, because Sal Soderbergh treats them like props, to go, "You know this person? They're dead. This is serious. Let's go."
Right. It takes some serious balls to have Gwyneth Paltrow show up in your movie and then kill her off in like, what, 10, 15 minutes? Yeah. Like she's fully seizing and having her skull split open in an autopsy before like the first act is over. And that's one of the things that I think is really great about Contagion. You don't get a lot of movies that take this kind of structure. It has the shifting perspectives in which the first little bit of the film is kind of Matt Damon's movie, then he sort of passes the baton and it becomes Kate Winslet's movie, then it becomes Lawrence Fishburne's movie for a little while, and it's that like almost Psycho like shifting perspectives that I really, really love, because it also allows Soderbergh to really go into a micro level of how an outbreak is affecting people, where you see the havoc it causes on Matt Damon's family, to the more macro level where you see Lawrence Fishburne, who's I believe at the CDC, and he's seeing, you know, he's trying to coordinate the government's response to this outbreak. So those are the things that I think make Contagion such a compelling watch. Not to mention that it's combined with just the beautiful aesthetic choices that Soderbergh makes. He shoots his movie with a lot of like sickly yellows and cold blues, and it's got that really awesome Cliff Martinez score.
And he's the cinematographer.
Yeah, and the editor. There's apparently stories. There's apparently stories of Soderbergh, Matt Damon, and some of the crew members like going out to a bar after the shoot, and Soderbergh's there on his laptop editing footage from that day.
That's funny.
Which, you know, only Steven Soderbergh would approach filmmaking like that.
For those of you who don't know, this man has been making like 2 movies a year. You know, we always talk about like the filmmakers who try to make one annually or maybe one every 5. This man makes 2 movies a year. You can go on his IMDb. It goes all the way back to the early 2000s when he lost to himself for Best Director at the Oscars. It's crazy to see how he shot it. And I'm looking at a quote here that he said to go on what you were saying, in Outbreak, I have, a bunch of clips that I had cut out of, like, the army watching over the civilians. A lot of the stuff that people keep talking about now with camps and just, like, military people coming in. And it very much shows you, like, a bunch of people. There's a really good scene in Outbreak where a mother gets taken away. But it's a random character that gets taken away and gets put into these camps. But you don't really know her. They just, showed you mom, daughter, and kids. They didn't really flesh her out too much. Whereas in the quote here, I'll just read it. We want to cut from Soderbergh. We can't cut to a city or group of extras that we've never really been to that we don't know personally. That was our rule. And that's a pretty significant rule to adhere to in a movie in which you're trying to give a sense of something that's happening on a large scale. That I think definitely attributes to the movie because just the way that it wraps up at the end, Contagion, trying to follow where it came from, which they both do. One with a monkey, one with a chef and other stuff that was going on. I think he really hones in on that aspect very well in Contagion.
Yeah, I do want to give Outbreak some props though, because it's moments like that that you mentioned where you see the mother being isolated from her family that I do think elevate this beyond just a simple blockbuster. Like I do think it's trying to also give you the idea of the impact that this is having on people. Like I think Outbreak is a pretty well-made Hollywood film. It's just that, Soderbergh takes these stories to another level, and that's why for me, it's not a movie that I would say this. I wouldn't have said this about Contagion months ago, but to me, it's a complete masterpiece. It's an absolute masterpiece.
See, it's true, right? You have a scenario come up, and you start seeing something from a completely perspective, and they got it right.
I think I heard this on the Rewatchables podcast, but it's like he turns a cough into the shark from Jaws,
Bro, the first 10 minutes of the movie, it's like the Invisible Man. There is nothing there, but you feel something moving. Recently, Chernobyl from last year did that extremely well when the kids were playing on the bridge. Wolfgang did In the Line of Fire, Air Force One, and Das Boot.
Yeah,
this is a man who knows how to handle it. Yeah.
But Soderbergh.
But it is interesting because I was expecting Outbreak to be... It is goofy, but a lot more goofier than I thought it to be. There is still that storyline where in the beginning, it starts off years prior, how there may have been a disease, and it's pretty much telling you that the government wants to do with it... it just wants to hide it. So nuke it up. Yeah. Blow it up. Let's take the virus and have it be a weapon. And that's very much what they're thriving with Outbreak.
Yeah, the closest that Outbreak gets to that, like, I think you're talking about sort of like the almost like 80s movies cheesiness, right?
Yes.
The closest it gets is in the Donald Sutherland character, who's this kind of unnecessary enemy. This guy who is in the military who... because he doesn't want to release certain secrets about where how this was like a military-born disease or something like that, he's ready to eliminate this entire town. Whereas, Contagion is not a movie that needs an enemy, right? The only enemy in that movie is the disease itself, and it's unseen throughout, but it's still scary. And by trying to fit in this kind of artificial villain into Outbreak, I think it does take away from some of that like lived-in realness that you could get from a movie like that. But it does provide you a bit of like satisfaction triumphing at the end, even though Contagion doesn't necessarily give you a sad ending, it's not as like uplifting as Outbreak ultimately.
Yeah, and it still has those shots like we were talking about the beginning of Contagion. Outbreak has like the moment on the plane where you would expect a doctor like Dempsey to know better than that, but he goes on it and it really shows you like how easily that stuff can spread. The clip with the dude in the movie theater.
Oh yeah,
that hasn't been all over the place on Twitter.
Right. Maybe we need to start that GIF trending.
Yeah, and then there's the moment where he goes into the hospital and he goes, "What's going on here?" There's a vent right there. Who knows where else this went? If y'all never been prepared to contain something like this, so
right, the way that Dustin Hoffman goes, it's airborne. It's also that kind of Hollywoodized version of this type of story. So I think we do enjoy Outbreak, though, even though Contagion is almost a completely different approach to this
more
type
effective
of material. Yeah, far more effective. And as I mentioned on one of our Intercut podcasts, I do think that there's something about watching a movie like Contagion under our current circumstances that makes things a little bit more concrete. Like you see the ways in which society could react or how people would potentially be forced to act, that takes away some of the unknown about the worst case scenarios, I would say.
Yeah.
So that might be something that you're seeking out in terms of looking for movies to watch in this current environment. But you know, if pandemic sounds like too much for you, there's a lot of other stuff out there.
There's a lot of other stuff, yeah.
I do think we want to open this thing up to some Contagion and Outbreak spoilers. So we're recommending both films, but if you haven't seen them and you don't want to be spoiled, you can click out to one of our recently posted episodes of the Intercut podcast, including our best picture bracket episode. But guys, I wanted to talk a little bit more about the effects, the spreading, I guess, in the two films. Whereas Outbreak sort of becomes this sort of contained story to one community, Contagion does give you that more global perspective. Was the way in which was either film a little bit more compelling in that regard in terms of the battle to beat the disease?
I think Contagion does it a little bit better, especially in the way that they explain it to the viewers. I think that stands out. The scene is when Kate Winslet's talking to this group of health experts, and she's talking about the R-naught, I think it's called.
Yes.
Which is like, so the flu is like one person, and then like this other disease is two people, and then for their disease it starts as two and then it evolves into four. And that's, you know, how with people interacting, how quickly it can spread to masses of people. And you definitely like see the effects of it. Again, kind of mirroring what's happening today. It's starting in China and then making its way over here. So that also kind of made it feel a little bit more real.
Yeah, Contagion really gives you that international kind of spread, which Outbreak doesn't. Outbreak really is contained to a couple communities, and I do think it's kind of interesting. And you mentioned that shot in the movie theater art, but whether it's the stuff through the vents or just seeing shots of like children at different points, it is kind of, both films do make a lot out of the spread of the disease, although Contagion just does it with this artfulness.
Yeah,
there you go.
That's hard to compare. The way that Soderbergh will just linger for like half a second on a pole that somebody has just touched.
Or the door, when Matt Damon picks up his son from the school and then he opens the door and then the door just slowly closes because, the kid touched the...
That's good.
Yeah, I was like, poof.
In Outbreak, they make every moment... Like, again, I love to see in the theater, but the dude he coughs all over everybody. Like, he just comes out like, like a cartoony cough.
Yeah.
Every single moment's got the score, and it's not a bad score, but the score is telling you what to feel. And every single time, like when the monkey bites or anything, you could feel the doubt. Like, that something's about it. Action. In Contagion, like you said, it's like, oh, we're gonna keep it on the door because it's on the door. This spreads. The whole concept in Outbreak is we gotta contain it to one place. It's limits the fear of the spread. In Contagion, you don't know where it is. It's everywhere. Over here, it's like, oh, we're bound to one little town. Why? That guy was on a plane. This animal went through. It's like it negates aspects of actual viruses in order to create a manhunt, because that's really what Outbreak is. Outbreak just makes it the invisible enemy, and it's what they got to defeat. They got to find. It's a manhunt movie, whereas Contagion isn't. It's something else completely entirely. So I find it funny that Outbreak is considered a medical disaster film when I think one focuses, I don't want to say more, but I think it really shows you how it seeps in. To answer your question, the spread of it is it's handled better in Contagion because it shows you how much more difficult it is to contain it. It's not just going to be in a little Nebraska town or whatever the town was that it was in.
Yeah, and I think both films do an interesting thing in order to heighten the stakes in that both films decide to kill off one of the central people coordinating the response. In Outbreak, there's a moment where Kevin Spacey's suit gets nicked and he fails to tell anybody, and then ultimately he comes down with the Mobatu disease, I believe it was called. And then in Contagion, we are following Kate Winslet as she's trying to coordinate the response in Minneapolis, and she wakes up in her hotel room in the middle of the night and starts coughing. And ultimately does not make it through the film. Both were really good, like, heightening of the tension moments, but I think there was something particularly devastating about Kate Winslet's character's death, because unlike Kevin Spacey's character, she's using the utmost precaution. She's the one who is telling people how to not catch this thing, how to stop the spread, and even she succumbs to it. And it's just one of those moments that kind of like sinks you. You know, it feels like, wow, if she is now falling ill, like what hope do people have? So that was a really, really effective moment in the movie for me. I don't know how you feel, if there was a moment that kind of like drug you down in either film.
No, definitely that moment. I remember as I was watching it, I was like, man, like, she gonna die? Because like, and even as she was like getting worse and worse in her condition, we see a moment where she's like laying down in like this makeshift hospital, and there's a like gentleman next to her who's like shivering, and she like still gives him her blanket, and you know, that keeps aligned with her character, and her trying just to like explain to people when she goes to the business where Gwyneth Paltrow was working at, and then they like say that this one, she interacted with this other dude that worked there, and she like calls him and she's like, get off the bus, like, you know, you're gonna, like, you're sick. And he's like, yeah, I have been kind of feeling kind of bad. And like, she's trying all she can. So seeing her go down, especially as the movie like paints it as she's gonna be like the central figure and stopping everything, is really like devastating, but effective. Yeah,
I agree, because when you have the one in Outbreak with Kevin Spacey, who actually won awards for his performance, the way that they do it for him, it's more so. Again, if I'm comparing what Outbreak is doing with the disease and treating it like, you know, like a villain that they got to go stop, a manhunt, it's almost like the Avengers' Colton death, where they use Colton's death to kind of be like the thing that pushes him forward. Because he's even got a joke when he's on his deathbed. Oh, how many IQ have I lost? And he says a number and he goes, guess I'm just as smart as you now.
Yeah.
And then he goes.
Yeah.
Contagion is not a movie that has time for deathbed quips.
Yeah. So... yeah, one definitely is way more effective.
And that also, I think, comes across in the way that both films decide to resolve their disease. With Outbreak, you have this mad chase after a monkey and a little girl trying to coax the monkey out of the woods.
Exactly, yeah.
Which is like that, I think, comes to that like blockbuster silliness.
Very 90s.
That feels outdated.
Just trying to get the shot. He's like 2 feet away from the monkey, looking like Jon Snow in the last season, not knowing what to do. Like, yeah. It's still good, though. Again, I was actually very surprised how good Contagion was. Like, it was actually a fun movie.
Outbreak.
Outbreak was.
It's easy to mix up the titles.
Yeah, but Outbreak, I thought, was still an enjoyable blockbuster that, while it's not deciding to do what Contagion did, what it does decide to go after, I think does it pretty well. And even 25 years later, I think, as corny as it comes off, it's defining of the 90s when it came out. Contagion is a movie that was ahead of its time. Yeah. That is a movie that is ahead of its time.
Absolutely. And
10 years later, and yeah.
It's props to Steven Soderbergh for this vision. It's props to Scott Z. Burns, who is a really, really smart writer. All of his scripts are deeply researched. Yeah. And there's been a quote that I've come across in my reading of interviews from him where he was basically saying that when he talked to people in medical communities, their view was, it's not if this happens, but when it happens.
When it happens.
And you can really feel that through the way that the film progresses, also in the way that it's finally resolved, and you get the Jennifer Ehle character who is working to try and develop some sort of vaccine, and you see like it takes so long, and she's going through so many like iterations of the vaccine and killing monkeys trying to stop the spread of the disease.
As opposed to Outbreak.
As opposed to Outbreak,
he said, give me 30 minutes. I'm going to whip it up really quick in the kitchen. And it's like, what do you...
Yeah.
What?
Although Contagion does have its own, like, why are you taking off your mask moment. I thought Jennifer Ehle was going to die when she goes and visits her father. And thankfully, the movie didn't have one last gut punch. That was it. Because it needed to give us some sunshine by that point. Because things get pretty bleak towards the end of Contagion. But ultimately, they are able to resolve whatever outbreak is happening there. I don't know. I thought that the way the film also handled those last few bits, where it circles us back to Matt Damon's character, and he's trying to keep his daughter away from her boyfriend. Yeah. That is some of the stuff that feels really resonant right now, where they're doing that social isolating thing. It's like, well, I don't have it, and you don't have it, so shouldn't we just be able to hang out? But like, no, like we're stemming the curve or whatever.
They say we get the warnings. He gave it to us back in 2011. We're just waiting for it, and it's crazy because this side effects. It's talking about opioid addictions and stuff that was going to happen in a sense with the abuse of pharmaceuticals. Yeah. The one afterwards that he did that was also shot on the iPhone about being stuck in hospitals.
Oh, insane.
Because they abuse your insurance. He's been on one. Sometimes he gets a little crazy, like the laundromat, and what he's really trying to say. But
he does have this reoccurring distrust of big money going through his films, and I think it's interesting to see that manifest in some of the ways that we get failings in Contagion. There is also another interesting character that unfortunately has some parallels today, where we have the Jude Law character, who's this blogger selling these ideas of what will be the cure for this disease. He sells this fake cure for Scythia in order to cash in and on the stock. As the stock goes up, he benefits financially. And now we're seeing news reports of senators selling off stocks after getting coronavirus. This morning, Trump was advertising medicines that we don't yet know whether or not they're going to actually do anything.
Man, who's got stakes in them? Like, what's going on?
So it is crazy the ways in which Contagion was able to seemingly predict so much.
Yeah. And I think as Art has been saying that in Outbreak, it seems like the villain is like this manhunt against the virus. In Contagion, the way I see it is like the villain is just like the spread of panic. And I guess you can kind of point that on Jude Law's character. Even though there are some people who think like he does, and whether it's for monetary reasons or they honestly think that way, I think his character was one of the more interesting ones, especially because Jude Law is such a great actor, but I haven't really seen like a role from him like that, like Weasley and like very uncomfortable.
There's a point where they were talking on a bench, and I was, that Jude Law? They had him all scruffed up and stuff. I was like, damn, is this him on makeup?
Did they like give him a chipped tooth at some point?
I was like, is this him? I thought he went all in on the role, and I do think Jude Law is a great actor.
Did you guys think either film had the better cast? Because both have a really deep roster and some really great performances. I know maybe some of the people in Outbreak aren't as popular today. But like it's both are surprising to me, though. I do feel like Contagion takes it one step further, just because it's like you're not expecting another recognizable face to show up, and then oh shit, you're Sanaa Lathan.
When I saw Dimitri Martin pop up,
I
said, "Is that Dimitri?" Alina's like, "I don't think." I was like, "I know that nose anywhere."
And
it was him. It's surprising to see how many people he was able to get, and I think that's the beauty of it, because some people were like, "I think I know that guy." People don't know Dimitri Martin like I do. So I think he did a perfect job of going, how many sublets can I get of like groups that are going to come see this movie? Maybe they don't care about Matt Damon, but when they see that obscure person who they actually follow is involved, you're like, whoa, they're a part of this? I think he does I think he uses his cast better for the script as opposed to Outbreak, which did it perfectly because it was for box office revenue, and they definitely got that. They got the big moments they wanted from them.
No, he gets great performances out of his cast here. Even Matt Damon, a kind of puts on a couple pounds and is a little bit more scruffier, looks a little bit more like a Minnesotan dad than he does when he's in his Bourne mode. But yeah, I read that Kate Winslet shot her entire role in this movie in 11 days, and that's one of the things that I think Soderbergh does. Is he, because he's such a run and gun filmmaker, he's able to fit these big movie stars into his films and give them shortened schedules, and that's one of the reasons why he can cast so well. Is like, yeah, Kate Winslet can find 11 days to be in your disease movie. I'm sure Gwyneth Paltrow didn't have to be there for that long, and she's got an iconic part in this film.
Yeah. That's why he's shooting on an iPhone, all of his recent movies, so that he can get Robert Downey for 10 seconds on the next one.
Exactly.
I do want to bring up the host because, as we wrap up, because I know Fernando was mentioning about talking about like when fear spreads faster. I think that's definitely something that the host, which I believe is free on YouTube, comes from Bong Joon-ho, is a perfect addition to add to these two movies that we're talking about when it comes in terms to Outbreak. A little bit different on that end, but definitely one that I would want to recommend when it comes to how a situation like this is handled when there's an outbreak that's occurring. Yeah.
Any other pandemic movies or pandemic style movies that you want to bring up? I know we've had conversations in the past about Z for Zachariah and Into the Night, or It Comes at Night, rather. I mean, for me, I think It Comes at Night is a really interesting look at like the potential for paranoia that situations like this can cause. Obviously, It Comes at Night is taking that to like its apocalyptic limit, but it is ultimately a movie about how humans can be scarier than whatever is out there.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if 28 Days Later counts, but there's
it does. It's a pandemic movie in its own way.
Someone was saying earlier about Jaws, that Jaws is a movie everyone should be watching because everyone's having trouble staying off the beach. Yeah. So I thought that was a little funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are good picks, I'd say.
Yeah, that's, I mean, really all I have.
Yeah.
Quarantine. That was one that was actually getting to me. And again, I should mention Rec, with the Spanish series that it's actually based off of, because that talks about a case where it's in the... if you live in an apartment like Zach and I do, and I think, Fernando, you may have other people who live around you. And when you're in a building, how do you contain it in that building? Especially when everyone's touching buttons and everything, and how fast it can spread, and you may have to contain a building. That's been interesting as well. Yeah. So I would mention Quarantine if you need it in English, but Rec, I think there's 4 of those. And I will say one positive thing that we had mentioned in the previous intercut. If you watch these movies and you're still a little scared, just remember that as bad as Contagion got, it's still a movie, and you know it's a movie because in real life, nobody went for the Dasani bottles like they did in Contagion. So that's how you know. That's how you know.
Absolutely. That actually does remind me of one other thing that I think Contagion maybe does a little bit better of, is talking about that the public, the common person sort of reacting and getting a little bit crazy. There is that moment in Outbreak where a couple families just decide like they're gonna drive on out of here and no lockdown can contain them, and they just get blown up. Like
they get blown up. Yeah.
That's
been a lot of people.
Another like very blockbustery thing. But Contagion is to me much scarier, where you get that like riot at the supermarket over medical supplies, and you see at one point Jude Law walking down the street, and there's just bags and bags of garbage, and you're left to realize like some of these essential services have just stopped, and people are out there looking for something.
The states are not united anymore. The border from Wisconsin? I've been to that border, so I was like, whoa, they're really closing it up from Illinois to Wisconsin. Okay. Yeah, it definitely gets those moments down to a degree that seem scary because they seem possible.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think that's about all for this edition of Let Us Explain. Let us know if you have any notes on Contagion and Outbreak and how they've made you feel during this pandemic, what they got right, what they didn't get so right. It's, I think, interesting to reevaluate movies like this given the new information we all have. So I'm excited to see the discussion around this one. You can catch more from me, Zach Shevich, by following me on Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd @ZShevich, and check out my YouTube channel at youtube.com/multiplexshowart. Fernando, actually, let me know where you can catch more from you.
You guys can follow me on Twitter at @border_logic, and you can also follow me at Letterboxd, which is Fernando_films, and here on the Intercut Podcast.
You can find me at The A to Z Show. You can find me at Let Me Explain, all on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, at my house eating all of the quarantine snacks that were supposed to last me 2 weeks. But you can also find me every week here on the Intercut Podcast.
Which one of your groceries lasted the shortest amount of time. I bought chocolate-covered almonds that I thought would go way beyond day one.
I'm surprised I still got a cheesecake. Remember I always made that joke to you about keeping the Haagen-Dazs in the fridge? I always said, I don't eat the Haagen-Dazs, and I treat my shows like my Haagen-Dazs. I keep it there, because once you eat it, it's gone, so you want to keep it there for a good day. Zach, I don't know if I'm going to get my Haagen-Dazs again. I told you I should have saved it.
You can listen to every episode of the Intercut podcast on iTunes, SoundCloud, or your favorite podcatcher. I like Overcast. And then make sure you're subscribed not just to the audio feed, but to the video feed as well, where you can catch our bright, smiling faces as we break down the latest in entertainment. Catch new episodes of the Intercut podcast every Friday. And please leave us a comment, like the video, consider heading over to iTunes to leave us a 5-star review. Like our Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter pages. All of them are at Intercut Pod to get updates throughout the week from Art, from Fernando, from me, from all the guests that we feature here on Intercut. Thanks again for tuning in, and until next time, no one has to weaponize the bird flu. The birds are doing that.